Good afternoon and welcome once again to our program, Missions Monday, where the mission continues. And we've been talking recently about reentry, returning from the mission field. And I'm Pastor Ronaldo Brown in studio with the Armans, who just returned pretty recently from the nation of Malawi after 11 years on the mission field. And I wanted us to share today with your story about returning and re-entering back to home base or back from your mission field. And I'll let them tell their story. So join in, sit back, relax, and let's hear the Armin's tale of return.
It's great. It's great to be back together online. I mean, when we're together, it reminds us of when we were on radio way back in Zambia.
Yeah.
Radio 4 FM, our best friend. But we returned from Malawi. I guess it's been almost 2 years now that we've been back. And we've just really seen the faithfulness of God in us coming back, but also not what we expected in a lot of different areas, but beyond, exceedingly and abundantly beyond what we could ask or think from God to do for us. And maybe just to start off, we can talk about what brought us to make the decision to come back. We after being in Malawi, we had planned to move back at some point. Of course, something that came up was COVID. COVID came, and the plans that we had to move back kind of were thwarted for a few years. But it was God's opportunity to move in that time, because in that time, property came. There was an opportunity to buy property in Malawi, so we bought property for the church, and then of course we needed time to develop it. So we started during the COVID period, and then after the COVID period, as we got the church finished, we saw, okay, maybe this is God's way to lead us onward. And the main reason we were planning to leave Malawi, number one, is that we had trained up leaders, and they had already taken over. And then we had a vision to move to a new place, and that was Namibia. So our plan was to leave Malawi, but the way that it happened was God's way of doing things. And I guess the first thing was when we at the point that we were going to leave Malawi, we had three churches. We had the main church, then we had the property that we had purchased, and then we had a church that Pastor Albert had started. And then when COVID hit, we had to be in smaller groups. So we took those three churches and we pretty much doubled them. One church for each of those. Pastor Matt Sleva and Lisa Sleva planted a church in the Lakeshore. And then we had a few churches. We had people that were meeting on the land that we had bought, even though there wasn't a building there yet. And so at the end of COVID, when it was okay for us to come back all together in one church, the leader said, "Hey, Pastor Chris and Pastor Matt, what do you think if we just let's just keep these churches here so that the people that have been coming don't have to travel all the way back to the main church?" And it was God's way of multiplying us.
So basically, COVID could have broken your churches, but in the breaking of the churches, they became more churches.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's not a plan for church planning.
Yeah.
That's not a plan for church multiplication. Usually what happens is you have a bunch of different cells that form a larger church, but you guys did it in reverse, and it actually worked. Julie, do you remember when Chris first mentioned to you, okay, you think it's time for us to leave? Remember how you thought was like when that happened?
I think we started talking about it like early, really early, even during COVID.
Wow.
We knew it was coming to an end. We had pastors already doing the work, and then COVID kind of pushed us out. At some point, we didn't know what we were supposed to do. We were like home, like most of the world, and we were like, but they did not tell us to close down the churches.
Really?
So we told them, okay, just continue. We as foreigners, we're going to stay home for a little bit. We had decided to stay in Malawi at the time, which was the best decision for us. At the time, we didn't know, but that was what we had decided. And our pastors there just, took over, like he mentioned. So once COVID kind of, like the country opened, and then it was, the airports reopened, we were like, I remember my husband saying, hey, it's almost like I don't need to preach anymore. The pastors are already doing the work. They haven't even stopped doing the work. So we felt like, oh, is it our time really? Is it what God is telling us? Like, do they really need us at that point? We knew it wasn't quite the time. We had, we have children. We were, still involved, in a lot of things in the church. Bible college was a main one, because we had a big Bible college with like 250 students that we couldn't just drop on, on them. So that's how we knew the churches were fine. The Bible college we had to see. But for sure, after COVID, we kind of mentally prepared ourselves. Okay, it's time for us to go. But is it really to go back to Baltimore? We were not 100% sure at the time. We were like, you know what? Our children are old enough. They're used to homeschooling. We have a good groove. Going back to America seemed like such a huge thing. The easiest, thing at the time was, okay, let's go to a different country. And, if you hadn't heard, we wanted to move to Namibia at the time. And then it was a year before when we really, we sat down with Pastor Schaller, and we saw a different, point of view and perspective that he showed us. Was, okay, we hadn't been back. Before Malawi, the 11 years in Malawi, we were in Zambia for 5 years. So we had been gone for over 15 years. So people didn't know us at the church. So he suggested, why don't you come back? And to me, I was like, oh, sure, but it's such a huge thing in my mind. How can that happen? How can that happen? But that's like a year before, right? A year before we kind of knew we had to go, and it might not be Namibia. It might be coming home.
That's a big one. And I guess when you make the decision, I guess the question is now how, and that's the most intimidating thing, because you're kind of like removing yourself from one place and planning yourself somewhere else almost simultaneously. So as much as you're thinking about how to get out, you're really scared of thinking about how am I going to get in, because things are so different when you come back. I mean, everything is different: the food, the culture, the housing, the living, and you went from first world to third world back to first world. So there's a lot of economic and social issues that kick in there. So how did you guys approach the how? Because if you can't see the how, sometimes and many times, if I don't see how I can do something, I won't go. Like even leaving, if I don't see how I can go to the mission field, I'm not going. You got to show me a path. God's got to give me a path of how, and then okay, God, I don't know how to do this, but I'll trust you. But show me how to do this, right? Show me, lead me. So take us through your process of the how.
Well, if we believe, and we do, that Christ will build his church,
yes,
and the gates of hell won't prevail, then he was using us as instruments of building his church. And so he helped direct us. And I think of that verse in Colossians 3:15, let the peace of God rule your heart. Like, let the peace of God umpire or direct your heart. And we had this big decision, do we go straight to Namibia? Do we come back to Baltimore? We got a multitude of counselors. We talked to Pastor Schaller, we talked to Pastor Shabelli, we talked to you, and just getting your input. And then God just started to lead. And the way that he did was that we had a good-sized team that was ready to move to Namibia. We were going to go. We had the Brits from South Africa, Pastor O'Brien and Clokey Britt were going to move there. Pastor Matt and Lisa Sleva were going to move. Our family was going to move. Pastor Bernard and Maggie and Talasha were going to move from Zambia. That was 5 solid couples and families that were going to be part of a great team. Then just little things happened where God started to direct us. Our visas were taking a longer period of time. Pastor Matt and Lisa Sleva decided that they had to come back to the U.S. to care for his parents who had some health issues. And then, we had the idea that maybe we should come back to the U.S. because our oldest daughter was ready to graduate. She had one more year of high school. So all those things played a part, and we sensed God's. We moved here. We talked to Pastor Matt and Lisa, and said maybe for a little bit. And then we started making decisions. We started selling our things. We started preparing the church. We would visit at the time there was 4 churches in Lilongwe, the capital city of Malawi. So we would spend a different Sunday at each church. And we would say, like, the pastors of the church that are pastoring this church, you speak the main message. Pastor Matt, Sleva, and I will just do introductions, and then maybe we'll sing with the family and things like that. So we were just aiding them to get to be on their own without them, without us continuing to be the leader. And that gave the church in Malawi a sense that, okay, they're making the next step. But they trust us to say that we are in charge. We're taking over the mission. So that was the beginning of it. And like it says in Ephesians 4:16, that in the body of Christ, every joint starts to supply.
Yes.
One big thing, and in the universal body of Christ, is that we had missionary friends around the city of Lilongwe that we would do homeschool with. Different churches, different pastors. Some were just Christians, but they were business people, expats that were living there. And just 2 of the ladies, maybe you can talk about that. Like, they just decided, hey, Julie, we're going to help you sell all your things, and like, that was a little thing from God. Just these amazing Christian ladies that just helped us.
For sure. Like, I would say, there are different, parts of our time in Malawi, like the time where we didn't have a team, the time we had, a team, at the time when we had a big team, and then people leaving again. But definitely, like, God provided, different people at different times of our, time in Malawi.
Yep.
And for sure that I would say it's one of the reasons why it was hard to leave. We had friends there, and our girls, were at an age where they were not little anymore. They were established. They had a group of friends. But when the 2 ladies were all behind us, and they were like, we'll help you sell your things. We had, a WhatsApp group of expats going and coming, and we could, like, sell our things or donate our things. But it took like 6 months for us to really, have this mindset. Okay, it's time for us to get rid of our things. It was not an easy thing.
I was going to ask you,
because we moved from Zambia with our things, and then not all of it. Remember, like, we tried to pack
a good amount.
Yes. And then, but we had accumulated so much stuff. Can you imagine, like, 10 years of homeschooling material, of like everything. We were host. We had a guest room. We had a homeschool room. We had so much stuff. And those ladies, were really good friends. They're still friends. And funny enough, they actually also left a year later after us. It's like, it was just our time, and it was much easier to know that we're not the only ones to say goodbye. It was a hard goodbye. But they, they were also, it was their turn later to say goodbye. And I wish I would have returned the favor of helping them. But they did.
It's amazing how God just brings in to come alongside in a very important moment. He brings the right people with the right spirit to just be a help, But it's difficult to just, like, you build a life for over a decade, and then you feel like you're giving that away. And particularly with your possessions, because the possessions become part of your identity because it's been around with you as long as you've been there. I remember Marcia Vincent had a water jug. She was in Mozambique. She had a water jug that she used to keep water in. And she said, I have to bring that to Zambia. I have to. I remember when it got damaged. Well, actually, what happened was they were moving from Maputo to Lusaka. and
remember.
they ran out of petrol. So the guy used the water jug to hold
Oh, no.
petrol, and it destroyed it. And she was just beside herself. She's like, "Oh my God, you destroyed it!" Because, and I understood you can get water jug with a clay pot, but it was really nice. But it's like when you've had something with you, your possessions have become part of your identity, and then losing it or giving it away is, it's like losing a member of the family. Like, oh my God, that's. I remember when I went back to Uganda after I moved, and I saw, okay, that's my couch. That was in my house, and but that's my dining room table, and like that person now has my refrigerator in their house. You just see pieces of your life in other places, and it just kind of takes you back, like, wow, I was living here, right?
And most of
Just the memory through your furniture. People and furniture, right? Or another one, like places that you know you used to go to, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to be going here anymore, because you get a routine, you get a schedule, you live, and then you feel like you're losing your life a little bit when you pull out, right? Closing it down. Even the words, the vocabulary is difficult. I'm closing down the mission. I'm not really closing down the mission. I'm just moving on, and the mission continues. And I guess you really have to guard the way you think, because your mind can frame things in such. It could be practical, but it could be negative, right? It could really like be negative, like, okay, closing down, departing. All the vocabulary really hits you heavy. So you guys made the decision, and then you communicated it to the body, the team, the ministry. You heard from God, and now you're beginning to, you kind of shutting things down. And the way you left wasn't sudden; it was gradual, right? Which I think is key. This is a life changing decision. It's not like, you're just moving from one state to another. You're moving from one continent to another,
with
right?
children too. Yeah,
With
the
children,
family.
right? Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. So then, okay, now we're pulling out. Take me back to the last day when you actually got on the plane, and you
Oh my
and
Really?
you're looking, and you kind of like packing the suitcase. Everything's ahead of you. You're like, it's actually happening. We're leaving.
I mean, I remember the car was our friend's car
Okay.
because we had
One of the
sold our
ladies that
car,
had
yeah.
helped us sell
So
everything
they were
brought
like
us to the
another
airport.
American family. They let us use their car for like
Wow.
a week. And then that was the truck that brought us, like that fit all our luggage. So we had 2 bags each. And that feeling of leaving everything behind. I mean, I it's blurry a little bit,
Yeah.
but for sure to think, like saying goodbye to the house and
Yeah.
our dogs and everything, even our
Wow.
dogs. Okay, that I
We left them
You
behind.
mean the ones that tried to kill me? Yes. Yeah.
no.
They were just trying to bless you.
Bless me with their teeth, if I'm not mistaken.
No, but that's a feeling for sure. He will always be with me.
Yeah.
Especially when we left. I think it was the first time in all the years that we didn't really know what was going to happen. Like, coming back here, we owned a house with a basement.
Okay.
Where we would come back to, for a few weeks every summer. So we didn't have to really worry about, just asking people for our whole family, family of 5, which is not an easy thing to find in the summertime.
Exactly.
So for sure, we were landing with the Slivas, in their attic. And we were like, was it their attic? No, their basement. Their basement. So we were like, okay, we'll be there for 2 days. And then we didn't know. We really did not know what was going to happen. But we knew that, I don't know how to explain it, but we knew we knew that there was a plan. And, up to this time, like, of course we didn't go, not knowing what we were going to do. The sleeper were not going to just, kick us out. I remember we ended up in Canada for a week. They had an apartment for us there. And then we actually eventually, 2 days after we landed, we found a rental, which we didn't move into for another few weeks. But that God was faithful, even from the moment we landed, which was crazy because our landlord now, the way we went straight, we were like, should we tell him really where we are coming from or what our plan is, like who we are? Do we need to tell him? And we did. We told him we just landed.
Uh-huh.
We are missionaries.
Uh-huh.
We have no salary, but we do have support. He was looking at us.
I like how
being so straight.
I like how you led the story. We have no salary.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I like
It's
that. Like, yeah, let's
it's
just be straight.
We have support.
Yeah.
But we never know
Yeah.
how much we're gonna
That's right.
get.
Right.
And then by the end of the day, he was like, "Okay, all right, that's great. You know, you have a family of 5." And then I have a few more families that are coming to look at the house 2 days after we landed. And then the guy called us by the end of the day and he's like, "Well, the house is yours."
Wow.
And we were like, "Are you sure?" Right? And he was like, "Yes, you're the only normal family that actually wanted to."
Wow.
Do you remember this?
What's funny about that is you see yourself as so irregular. Like, we don't fit, we don't belong. And like, you're the only normal family.
Meaning, like,
yeah.
you know, like a full family.
Yeah.
With children.
Yeah.
And we've been there ever since.
Wow.
Which was
And that's a big one. When you come out, like we got past that, when you land, laying your head, where you lay your head is that quintessential to you being comfortable, to you being even safe, like secure, like, okay, I've got somewhere to sleep. And it's regular.
We had no furniture. That's the thing we told them. Like, but we have nothing. For now.
When do you want to move in?
Like, maybe in 2 weeks. We have a few places to go in between, and then we'll see.
There was no U-Haul pulling out.
He was
no
like,
truck.
When are you moving in? Well, our stuff's in the basement, our suitcases, and we were like, well, the furniture will come as it comes.
As we get it, then you'll get it. But until then, get used to the echo. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, another amazing thing was as we were leaving, we didn't plan this. I really feel God doing this. We had this staggered departure from Malawi.
Okay.
My parents, who were on the team, they were the first ones that moved back to the U.S.
Okay.
Right when Malawi opened up after COVID. So they moved here. In fact, they moved in our basement. So we couldn't actually go back to our basement anyway because they were there. Then secondly, Pastor Albert and McLean, who were living in Malawi for 10 years, they moved across the border and planted a new church in Pastor Albert's home country. So that was maybe 6 months or a year later after my parents left. And then the Slevas moved back here to Baltimore. And that was a great benefit to us because they said that you can land in our home. And that's a wonderful thing about missions too, is that these are team members that you're together. It's like you do battle together with them, and there's
one church, one family, right? But I like that's a good lesson though in church planning. We can glean from that. We often talk about a staggered arrival. Like you don't want to all arrive in a country at the same time because you want someone there so they can have somewhere to land. But it's also vice versa. You also want to leave staggered so you don't just rip the Band-Aid off and cut all the way out, but you leave in pieces like, okay, this person goes, and they can actually assist. I don't think we think about that sometimes. In the larger teams, you can do that. Maybe you're a smaller team or just a family, so there won't be such a staggered. But I've seen families where, okay, the husband might send the wife and the kids behind that first, and it may come a month or two later. So, but it's still smart. It's still very, very smart to stagger the departure. And in your case, it helped you to have a place to land, right? So now you've landed, you got a place to stay. Okay, that's a big one. But then on top of that, there's this idea of living, social, cultural, economical. Okay, we're here. Does anyone know we're here? Who do we know here? We don't have anything really. We don't have the money. We don't have the job. We don't have the furniture. We don't have all these things. And there can be a feeling of inadequacy, like I don't have enough. This is not going to work. How is this? The how keeps coming up. And you got kids, you got a family, right? So it's a big challenge. It's not like some single missionary I can throw in a corner in somebody's basement for 6 months. This is a life. This is family. It's like you said, Julie. It's a sizable family. So it takes some time to get like set a little bit.
Took a month about, right? We like traveled a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, really, if you think about it, one great thing that was communicated to us that helped us is that don't find pressure to find your place right away in the church, even in your ministry. take some time to settle and see where God will lead you.
Say more about that. I mean, because sometimes when you're a missionary, okay, like when you're wherever you were, you're usually in leadership. You're usually like you're like driving the vision. You're part and parcel of the leadership decision making process. And when you come off the field, you may not find that you're involved at all.
Right.
You're just a body member, and not in a bad way, but you're no longer so involved in leadership things and decision making. So you can kind of feel, number one, you can feel the pressure like, okay, I've got to produce something because they got to come in and like, okay, I got to make something happen. Or the other side of it is you ask yourself, how come they're not asking me to do things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was doing raps and I was teaching Bible school over there in that country. Here, no one's asking me to do those things.
Yes.
So you can get insecure about what you're not doing, or you can be insecure about what they're not asking you to do.
Mm-hmm. And that really is an opportunity for us to get closer to God and to lean on our relationship with God. And how do we internalize that as missionaries? Am I going to get wounded, or am I going to say, God, I'm doing this unto you?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So am I satisfied? Because that is a great thing that happens. Not a great thing, but that can happen with missionaries, where your identity becomes the mission, or your identity becomes your title or what you're doing, when really your identity has to be, I'm a child of God.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to learn that. So whatever place that I'm positioned, I want to be content in that.
Mm-hmm.
And there definitely were times of doubt.
Yeah.
There was definitely times where we would talk and say, like, why did we come back?
Mm.
And then, but God was faithful, and I think we were faithful to each other to counsel each other. Like Julie would say to me, I remember one day where I was just like, man, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be a part of anything. I just want to, just be quiet. I don't want to talk to anybody. And you were like, that's not why we came back. You think about what you're saying. That's not who you are.
Wow.
And it was like, slap me out of it, get out of this.
Down goes Frazier. It's a wrap.
And I was like, you're right. That's not profitable. It's not good for the ministry. It's not even good for myself.
Yeah.
And then God would open doors. And then, someone would ask, would you like to substitute in this Bible college class? And then you start to have a little bit of a direction of, okay, this is how God wants to use us in the ministry. And then also starting to think, like, instead of being, having a solution oriented decision to say, like, okay, this is a problem. Yes. But God, give me the solution for it as well.
That's right.
I want to be part of the solution, not just complain about the problem. And we said maybe we can help in the missions office to some of the things that maybe we saw that their needs. Maybe we can be the solution for that need.
Beautiful.
And first, it's identifying what we can, what can be we can grow in, and then saying, okay, maybe God, you can use me to be a solution in that area.
It's always a big challenge when you come back on how you're going to serve, where you're going to serve. And if you don't have those two answers, you begin to question, why am I serving at all? And you get to where you were like, I'm done. I'm trying to help, and I don't know how to help, and no one seems to be telling me what to do to help. So I'm just going to shut down. And you can shut down, and you can isolate, and you can disappear, and you can even say, how come no one's like trying to direct me? And the thing is, like you said, I can't let other people be the will of God for me. I've got to hear from God and let God lead me in my service, right? And my place in the body is not revealed by man; it's revealed by God. It's revealed by God. God's got to show me. That's tough. That's very tough. Like I said, you've been, as much as you say your mission is not your identity, you start putting in 5 and 10 and 15 years, and you find 15 to 20% of your adult life was in one place, in one identity, serving a certain way. To suddenly come out of that, and suddenly be like, now you're here, and say that was then and this is here. That differentiation is difficult.
Yeah,
it's a challenge. Because everything in your mind is like, but I was all these things over here, and you can see yourself as nothing here.
Mhm.
You might not find value in just being a member in particular, because maybe you were extraordinary somewhere else.
Mhm.
So you don't. But I like the fact that you're able in a marriage, you're able to counsel each other with the right perspective. Because it's easy when you're married to pile on. Your spouse feels a certain way, and you just say, because you love them and you see them hurting, you just say, "Yeah, that's true." And next thing you know, we've taken a position, and then it's hard. It's
When you
very,
fellowship in that,
yes.
like an echo chamber of things.
What's scary about that is your children pick that up.
Mhm.
The kids grab that, and then they can have the same way. And how many bitter missionary kids have you met because they came home and mom and dad didn't get a good vibe, or things didn't work the way they thought they were, and that got transmitted to the kids, and then the kids say, "Yeah, and we were," and then they may never go serve God again anywhere else because of the way the parents and the way they came back. It can get really ugly. But
Yeah.
in you guys' case, it's amazing that God gave wisdom to both of you to speak life to each other, and then that's what our kids get. They see the life that's being spoken.
And bringing that, like that hurt and that wound to God,
Mhm.
and saying, God, this is the way that I'm feeling right now, and I need help.
Mm,
And I would always think of King Saul,
mhm,
how he had that wound,
mhm.
but he never went to God with it.
Excellent.
Whereas David would go to God continuously, whether things were going great, he would go to God. When things were tough, he would write a psalm about it. Either way, he was bringing it to God, and God again is faithful.
Mhm.
He brought a person, like you. I remember we were just in the parking lot, and you just reached out and said, Hey, listen, there's no expectation from you as you're new here
Mm.
coming back. Just walk with God. God will lead you on how He's going to use you.
Yeah.
And then, Pastor Schaller would do it, or Pastor Shabelli would reach out, and then just people in the church would just reach out too. And some people, sometimes they don't know how to react to a missionary. Like, they're used to missionaries coming back, being here for a couple weeks in the summertime, and then the question is always like, "Hey, when you going back? When
Yeah.
you going back?"
Exactly. Like, what?
Just
We just moved.
Yeah. I don't know when we're going back. We want, and so it's also tough. What do you say to a returning missionary? Sometimes that can be, what can I say to you? I don't know. Maybe I don't have the same things in common with you right now, but
Let's sit there for a second. Okay, let's just say, okay, what would you say? Let's just say I'm a returning missionary coming home. Give me some things you could say to them that would be edifying and encouraging without being insensitive. Because it's so easy to want to care and to be insensitive.
Or to ask,
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
like, what do you need? But you're like, I don't know what I need.
Yeah, that's the thing is, you feel like you're helping when you say, "What do you need?" But it's so open ended. So it's like both of you give me some questions or some statements that you can make to a returning missionary, because I think this helps us a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I think we're learning also in the past 2 years, right? Because it's our first time returning. I mean, we returned when we first had Kalia,
Mhm.
but it was, after a year,
Mhm.
and I felt like it was a different, season for us. We were just the two of us.
Mhm.
I don't even remember much of it. It's like a big blur, but we had done it. It's true. So it's the second time, but for sure we are learning along the way. Well, we wish we would have been able to like communicate to a few people,
Okay.
that have come to us and said, "What do you need?" Because it's like, well, we don't really know what we need, but for sure, what we realize now is there is probably a need for returning missionaries,
Mhm.
and even though sometimes it's not necessarily like like
tangible.
no like material,
Okay.
you know,
It could be emotional. It
but
could
it
be
could
time.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, it could be like just a sit down about, and I'm more sensitive to that now because I've gone through it, and I
Beautiful.
wish I would have had, like the words to
Mhm.
say. It would have been nice. Some people were interested, and
Okay.
it's not even about like asking the question, how you doing,
Mhm,
like
mhm,
what
mhm.
can we help with.
Right.
It's almost like it would have been, yeah, it would be nice if if there was a sit down
Okay.
with even our kids. I think our kids were, brought back here, and they found their friends again, and it's like it was a surprise to them and their friends that they were not leaving again. It was the first time for them to be back and then to stay. So it was harder than that they had expected, for sure. Just because people were not used to having us around. It's almost like, oh, you're here now.
You're here longer than usual.
Yes,
yeah, that's the thing.
it,
Like,
yeah.
why are you still here? I had one year I came out, I stayed home extended. Someone's like, you're still here?
Yeah,
And I was like, is that wrong? Is that bad? Well, convention's over. Why are you still here? What happened? Was there a death in the family? Like, oh, I'll try one. Here's a good statement. I'm going to borrow what you said. I'm going to say it this way. I'd love to meet with you just to have coffee for sometime next week. Here's my number. Give me a call when you're free, and we'll get together. That's very, very specific, but at the same time, it's just I want to spend time with you. And usually when you spend time with someone, you can get a good discernment on what they kind of need. They might just need the time. They might mention to you, like, I'm having a hard time getting a car, or I'm having a hard time finding a place for our kids in school. That comes out in the conversation versus what do you need? I mean, because you can't treat people like machines and just say, okay, give me your grocery list of exactly what you need, and I'm going to tick the boxes like a wedding registry. It can't be that way. What's another one, Pastor Christie?
I think just saying it's great to have you back for a season or for however long you're here, and tell me something about the mission field, so it's a way of connection,
okay,
so you can, because we are blessed in this ministry to have had a lot of missionaries that have left, and sometimes for the people that are here in the church, it might be overwhelming. Like, there's so many missionaries.
Yes.
And so that at least they can get to know you and get to know what you're a part of. That can be something that, it's hard to do that when you're passing through the church and there's a lot of people.
Sure.
But even just saying, like, I would love to hear about, some of the things that happen on the mission field, and that, that just gives an opportunity of connection, and that just gives an opportunity of, sharing what God's done. And I think it's actually an asset to have returning missionaries in the church.
Yes.
Because it can stir up the vision for people in their life.
Because I think both of those two suggestions is the word time. Because when you first come back, there is the pressure to produce things and materials, but you don't really know how to spend time with people. If you've been out for over 10, 15 years, I found you don't know anybody. I remember coming back, looking into the right side of the church, and I said, I don't know anybody in that section. I remember one time I came home and Pastor Shaller introduced me to the church. I'm like, in my own home church, I'm being introduced because no one knows who you are. They don't know you. Or it was 10, 15 years ago. They were different ages and different things. So you feel like a stranger it's like being a stranger in your family at a family reunion. All you know is Uncle Tom. You don't know anybody else. So I think, like you said, spending time with people, getting to know people. Okay, I had coffee with her last week. So now I've got one person in the body that I know and knows me and knows a little bit. So I'll look for that person. Especially in a larger church, it's like you can disappear. You can really disappear. And I think people's heart is to like, they don't know what to say. They don't know how to approach. The questions tend to be more either very open-ended, like, okay, so if you need anything, let me know. And that's so empty because you called at 2 a.m, my car's broke down on 95. Well, you need to call AAA. Whatever. It becomes that kind of thing. So having personal connections. And Jody, I'm going to ask you this question. Getting relationships, like starting relationships again. That's hard.
Yep.
That's super hard.
Especially when it's home base.
Yeah.
But it's not my home church.
Yeah.
So I did not grow up in the school. I went to Bible school maybe for 1 year here, but most people that went to Bible school with me, they're not here anymore.
Right.
And then, so, we have children, so it's helped us over the years, connect with other parents and families. But for sure, I would say I'm thankful for the few moms that reached out to me. There's a few of them that I would say, like, thank God they did.
Yeah.
Because there's, a few times where you wonder, like what am I doing? And it's, sometimes I was sad because we are, it's not, I'm not trying to be negative or anything, but we all gone through it, right?
Yeah.
That feeling of not belonging.
Yeah. You don't fit.
Because it's like a new church coming back to this new church
Yeah.
in which you're a part of, but really you are a new member to a lot of people. They're like, how long have you been in this church? Well, I don't really know how to answer that.
Do you have a half hour?
And then there's, all the other side of it where, we have a Bible school, we encourage the mission field, we have a missions office, and we encourage people to go on a mission field, but then when we come back, it's almost like, don't forget the ones also coming back.
Yeah.
Like, don't forget to, at some point, like, make sure, and I think we've become a bit sensitive about it. And we are in the wrong also, because sometimes I didn't even know how to respond or to act or even respond to the questions.
Yeah,
what do you need? Well, sorry, I don't have any money to help you. So why would I help you with? Almost.
Yeah.
But just as little as just reaching out, it changed everything for me, for sure.
Wow.
To just, at least people are caring, and even though it wasn't necessarily like questions about, the mission field, or, I'm also a mom. I'm also like, I'm not a homeschool mom anymore, but we had a normal life.
Yeah.
A bit, being in third world country, but still had a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same, things to deal with my children. So coming back here, I had again to deal with school and running around in a whole different pace of life. And I'm thankful, to the moms, and they know who they are.
That's beautiful.
But also you especially, me too, made a point to also say, okay, we will also reach out.
Sure. So there was a point where, you did, you have to make a decision.
So
like being on the mission field. Okay, so this is how it is. You have a smaller church, right? And then, like, we visited your church yesterday.
Yes.
You turn around, it's easy to say hello to everyone. You feel like you're kind of
You belong
there for that.
Yeah.
But when you're in such a big church, it's families, it's a lot of people that already have known each other for so long. And I feel like, okay, now I'm going to pretend that I'm back on the mission field, and I'm going to start saying hello to people and just care about people. Because I feel like I'm a member of the church, but we are also here to reach out to people.
Beautiful.
And a lot of people around us, they don't really know us, and I don't know them. So we made a decision, when was it? Like a year ago or something. Okay, enough already. We are not going to just come in, sit down, always in the same spot, and then just kind of have to leave, get our kids, and just go home. We had to make a decision to, like, reach out, even if it's people that supposedly, we should know, they've been in the ministry for years. We're like, no, purposely, we're going to smile and say hello. And sometimes it takes, right? It takes, faith, and just,
I love that. I like the idea
out of your way. Yeah.
You don't just sit back and say, they should be loving me. But I want to remember that I'm a member of the body of Christ. Yeah. I'm also a minister. I'm going to use that word. Wherever I am, I'm a minister. Sure. I don't just want to be ministered to, even though I need it. I just got in. I feel like I need it. I want to also be a minister. I want to have a portion in the body of Christ to minister to whoever God brings in my life. And in that ministry, God does a lot of healing, That's a beautiful thought. And I think sometimes as missionaries, we can have this entitlement that because we came back, you owe me love. And I kind of sit back and wait for you to love me. And I can expect love. It's not bad. I need it. But I want to also forget in my desire to need to be loved, I don't want to forget to love. I want to remember that I'm loving too. And then in the loving, in that exchanged life, in that exchanged love, God can show me my place. He can show me my value. And suddenly God gives you an entire new group of people that you didn't even know before. That's a great word, Julie. I love that. That's a great decision that I don't know if a lot of returning missionaries make that decision. I think some that if they slot into leadership right away, they kind of thrust into that position. But let's just say I come into the body of Christ as a returning missionary, and I'm not given responsibility. I'm not given authority. I'm not given a specific ministry. I'm just in the body. What am I going to do? I got to really kind of pull up my socks and say, oh God, help me be a minister here. Because that first and foremost, wherever you put me, on a plane, in a train, in a new church or an old church, I'm a minister. I'm an able minister. And that takes courage. Like you said, it's a faith statement. Like, by faith, I don't know you, but hi, I'm Chris. I'm Julie. Hi. Nice to meet you. These are my children. We're here. We're part of this church. You're part of this church. We'd love to get to know you. That sounds simplistic, but it's challenging to do. You have to really, like you said, you got to come to a decision and say, we're going to do this. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we're going to love people. We're going to love on people. And in doing so, we're going to find the love of Christ for ourselves. That's amazing. Let me ask you guys this thought. What lessons, that you've done this twice. I mean, you did it with Zambia, and that's a blur, I know. But then you've done it again. What lessons have you learned in this process of coming back?
I think one thing is to, as we're going out, maybe the next time, or for people that might be going out, to mentally prepare for when they're going to come back. And it's hard to do that,
yes,
when you're going out, but it's great to have that decision and say, what kind of questions should I be looking for when I'm coming back? And just putting that in the back of your mind. Maybe it's taking some of your support and putting it aside for when you're going to come back, at like a return fund, something like that, or having a sort of some kind of program to do that. Maybe that can be in the missions office with support. So like a return fund, so that you come and you're not, you're
just with nothing.
yeah, you have
because
kind
it's
of,
way more expensive to come back, actually.
Yep.
It's like it costs a lot of money to come back.
Well, you get the tickets
And,
alone.
Well, tickets for the whole family.
Housing.
Housing and
food, car. I think also too, we leave so low.
yes.
You leave with the bare minimum financially, right? No one leaves with a flood of cash. You just leave low. So we tend to have that same mindset. Oh yeah, I'll come back and I have faith and I'll just, okay, I like the idea of preparation, but like you said, the learning of thinking about returning. And sometimes as missionaries, you can take that the wrong way. You can feel like I'm cheating the process if I'm thinking about returning even as I'm leaving. But actually, that's just wisdom. It's wisdom.
and it's part of counting the cost. Christ said when you go to war, you count the cost.
Yes.
And I think that can be part of it. Another thing I would say too is, be ready for your cultural reintegration too.
Okay.
As you're going on the mission field, the culture that you go to might be a lot different than the one that you're leaving. So being prepared for that, and then as you are planning to come back, maybe talking about that. And maybe the missions office could have just even a counselor that would say, it could be a returned missionary that would say, hey, you're coming back, how, kind of talking through the differences. When you lived in the third world, you didn't do anything in the evening. There was no evening programs. But now when you're coming back to the first world, everything happens in the evening.
Up all night.
Yeah.
24/7.
Like Africa changed me.
Yeah.
Africa changed me.
When the sun goes down, it just.
It's like from being a night person to like not wanting to do anything.
Yeah.
And coming back was very, very hard. And I still
and so there's going to be a learning curve to reintegration and being ready for that. I think that's helpful.
Okay.
And just kind of, critical thinking through things in advance. So as you're preparing to come back, you start to think like this, that there's going to be a season of readjustment, and I need to be okay with that.
Good.
And, I know in leadership, we're not putting pressure on people that are returning. So that's wonderful. But sometimes we put pressure on ourselves and say, like, oh man, we need to give ourselves grace and say, you're going to need a time to readjust and things, and don't think it's going to be okay right away. It's okay for you to grow into this and this is a learning process, and give yourself grace.
Okay, those are good lessons. I like that. Julie, maybe we could close with, you could give me one word of encouragement.
Me?
You.
Yeah, I was going to say amen to what my husband said.
Amen. A word of encouragement.
Yes, I agree with what he said.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't prepared anything for that.
That's okay. But just imagine that you're speaking to another missionary who's getting ready to take the step to come home, and they have a lot of insecurity and concerns that you had, and they're not bad. They're just they're important, and they're necessary. But just an encouragement with these things, I want to make sure I'm thinking the right way, because really that's what you're addressing. You're addressing the thoughts.
Yeah. So, I mean, for sure, what's helped me, over the years is that, you look back at, what God has done for us. And literally, like, over the years, we can say, like, we witnessed, his faithfulness and everything. And then it's the last step, all the years that you've been on the mission field and you've seen God work. And I think it's a best kept secret, right? For Christians to be on the mission field, because we've learned to really, really like wait on God for things. And we've seen the hand of God, like, answer our prayers and just provide for us. And I would say, sure, it's easy to say, have faith and God will provide also for you. You need a plan, like we talked about it, but for sure, like my testimony is like God really answered, a lot of like the little worries that we had coming back. And if God has called us to do all this, he will also finish it,
Amen. Yeah. 1 Thessalonians 5:24. Faithful is he who called us, who will also do it.
Yeah.
I
believe it. Yeah.
A great verse. That was the verse I went on the mission field with that verse. My first missions verse for my first missions trip. That was 1 Thessalonians 5:24. That was my verse. It's a great verse. I think if I look to the faithfulness of God, I find myself being a lot more faith-oriented than if I look to the faithfulness of me. But anyway, it's great to think with perspective about coming home, because very few folks, as Pastor Chris pointed out, think about coming home when they're going out. It's the excitement, the charisma, the romantic even vision of missions is the swashbuckling family just slashing through the grass, going forward in the call of God, wild animals, cannibals, let's go get it, rah, rah, rah. And then somehow on the way back, like Jules, you're on the plane, your luggage is underneath, and you're thinking, that's it. It could almost be a letdown. You're like, it's over, but it's not. I like Pastor Chris said, I need to have a holistic view of my life with God. This was where God had me and used me for a season. Like a fork is still a fork, even when it's not dinner time. So, okay, this is who I am. You can tell I'm hungry.
So I love food analogies.
So I am Paul said, I am what I am. He didn't say I am what I do, or I am what I did. I am what I am. So this is where I am in 1 Corinthians 15:10. Okay, God. So the adventure for me is, how will you use this fork again? I was a salad fork in Malawi. I might be a dessert fork in America. I don't know, but I know I'm a fork. I gotta kill this metaphor.
Anywhere you can use me.
Anywhere you can use me,
I'm least I'm associated with food.
That's it.
Yeah.
So anyway, God bless you. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. It's been great to be on Missions Monday, talking about re-entering into, maybe not necessarily your home church, but re-entering into, or just leaving and re-entering into the church of God, wherever God would have you. And also, too, I think the way you come back has a huge effect on if you ever go back out again. It really does. And they've done it twice. And I think there's a maturity that comes with that gives you capacity to go again. Because some folks, they don't handle it the right way, or let's just say things don't work out the way they thought it was going to work out, and it could crush your vision for future missions. So this is just as important. I would say coming home is just as important as going out. But I would say if I'm going to be familiar, I'm going to be familiar with coming home. And there's the challenge. So thank you. Hopefully this program has blessed you and helped you. God bless you. We'll see you next Monday on Missions Monday. Take care.